The other thing there's another thing I did want to ask you about. You had brought up, because you were talking about your experience marketing and working for these big companies. Another parallel between us, I think, is finding our way there by doing small things and then leaving that world in some way. I'm wondering what that world was like for you and what pushed you out of it, because a lot of people ask about, well, why would you leave something like IGN when they maximize your creativity? They paid you decently. I mean, not great. You got to travel the world and do whatever you wanted. I'm like, well, I wanted to do something else. It's almost unimaginable for people. I imagine you working at a Fortune 500 company. Jesus, that must be a Fortune 100 company, maybe even.
I would probably, yeah, they could be. I'm not
Yeah,
sure, especially
right.
at their peak,
Right.
2010-ish or whatever.
I feel like a lot of people would look at that and be like, man, you have money, brands, room, space. What was that world like, and why did you want to get away from it? Because I sense something there in you that's parallel to me, and not really being able to explain it to a lot of people who want security over maximum return, let's say.
Yeah. Well, there's a few assumptions there that I don't think are correct. Assumptions
Okay.
that I made, and a lot of people make that I think if you actually poke at them are not correct. So number one, the idea of security. Your job is not secure anywhere. Layoffs happen all the time, even at companies like Microsoft and shit that are just printing money, where it seems like that's a sure thing. They lay people off all the time, or your team, this happens all the time. If you work at a big company, they're like, oh, you're getting moved to this other team with a week's notice because, the director of this department is leaving the company. And so we're rolling your team up into this other person. So you have a new job for this person who's an asshole or an idiot and doesn't care about you. And so the idea that you can sort of cling to the safety of this big ship that's never going to sink is not true. The company may not go under, but your actual job is you're subject to the whims of a giant machine that doesn't give a fuck about you. And there's no, and they shouldn't give a fuck about you. Like, I'm not faulting them for that, but you're just a tiny little cog in that machine. So that's assumption number one, is that a working for somebody else or a big company is more secure is not true. Assumption number two, that you'll make more money there, is also not true. I make 4 times more now working for myself in these various different capacities than I did working for Abercrombie. 4 times more. And if you've worked at a big company or really any company, think about the kind of raise that you're likely to get. I don't know if IGN was like this, but unless you're getting promoted at the end of the year, like, well, Colin, you've been doing a great job. You did this, this, and this. We're, just really thrilled with your performance. Here's a 5% raise. Like, 5%? Really? Like, how many millions of dollars of value did I contribute to this company? Or give me an extra like $3,000 a year? Gee, thanks. And I'm not turning up my nose at $3,000. I understand that's a decent amount of money, but the upward mobility is really not there. Like, I think if you're a low performer, it's probably great, but if you're a high performer, you're held back. I think there's a ceiling that limits your ability to advance your career and do shit. The other thing is, like, the bigger the company is, the narrower your job description is. So if you're somebody like one of us, or probably a lot of people listening, that has a lot of ideas and wants to like do big shit, they don't want you to do that at a big company. You have one specific job. Your job is to do that, no more, no less. It is not welcome to bring other ideas to the table. And again, I understand why, because you can't have a company full of thousands of people that are all, trying to act like they're the CEO. It can't happen. People need to fall in line, just like the military. There's a command structure. People need to fall in line. I get it, but it's frustrating if you're a high performer that has a lot of ideas and wants to do cool shit. That's not going to happen at a big company. So there's that. And I think there's a lot of value to working for somebody else, especially at the beginning of your career, to sort of learn how things are done. Again, a lot of the reason why you were so successful with Kind of Funny and with CLS and LSM is because you learned the playbook at IGN and built a network and all that kind of stuff. So I think there's a lot of value there. I don't mean to discount that, but at a certain point in your life or your career, I think people like us, you're like, I want to bet on myself. And if I take this, if I take the leap of faith and I fail, so be it. At least I tried. But um, I don't think that a lot of these assumptions that people make, that you're going to make more money, that it's going to be more safe or stable, I don't think that those are actually true. I think that the supposed safe path is actually just as risky, if not more. And like, you have less control over your fate when you're working for someone else, not more.
Yeah, I remember. It's very interesting hearing what you say, because I remember at IGN, the thing I wanted to extract more than anything when I felt vulnerable there was a contract, not a raise necessarily, which was also nice, but they only offered to give me like the position I wanted and the money that I wanted, in quotes, when when I left. So
Right.
I had to really just do it. But you're right. I mean, I make ironically, I probably make 4 or 5, I don't know, times more than I made at IGN now. So you're absolutely right. But it's also the interstitial kind of Lucy in the evolutionary trail for me was kind of funny, just because I was able to then take everything at IGN and learn it there, and learn about all the things we did wrong there too, which was, we
Yep.
did a lot of things wrong, and then make it even better and stronger here. So but I will say, well, Dustin, let me ask you this, because
Yeah.
you worked for someone else, you work for me now, but you also work on your own. I mean, how do you feel as a creator and your own, I don't know, your own security, your own safety, building yourself up? Because I will say that the security that Finn is talking about comes from money, but it also, I think, comes from having time enough to establish yourself such that if something goes wrong, if
Right.
something, like, there's room for error and there's room for to try again. Because I wouldn't be so eager to tell people, and I'm not necessarily eager either way, but I'm not so eager to tell people to be creators, because it could really go badly for you.
Yes.
You
Right.
you
And
have
by
to
the way,
want
I
it. I
should
think
say,
that's what I was saying with Finn too, about his he wanted it from an early age. I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
No, well, either way, I was just going to say that, it's interesting that we talk about this, Colin, just because you and I have had a really good, like, open dialogue with either my streaming or other stuff, that it's like, my goal isn't to like eventually jump ship or something. It's just like the idea of, like you said, establishing yourself in order to, in the, like, a case scenario where it's like, I hate to bring this up, but if something happened to you, Colin, where you couldn't do this anymore, it's like, I don't want to go work at some desk job. But as far as what Finn said, I think what is just interesting is that, you know, these jobs that don't care about you, and it's been weird for me, because I have only worked at small businesses with, like, actually in both jobs I've had, I was the only other employee. So it's been a weird dynamic for me in that aspect. But there's something to be said, of course, about like wanting to go out and be an arbiter and do something yourself. The thing that I'm always cautious about, and I see this all the time, is people that just like jump into the pool without thinking twice.
Mhm.
And so that's something I always tell people. It's like, you can try this out without having to quit your job. Like, there are so many and that's what you mentioned, Finn, earlier about, like, people have the internet now. You can just like record a video on your phone and put it out there. You can put your opinion out there so easily. And it's really, because of that, really changed the entire dynamic of creators. The keys are in the hands of really anybody with a cell phone now.
Right.
Yeah, I
And
would suggest
I'm sorry, go ahead, Finn. Sorry.
I would suggest anybody, before you just, as you said, Dustin, jump into the pool with both feet and no shirt on and potentially belly flop, ramp up the thing that you want to do as a side hustle while you're still employed, and see if you like it,
Right.
see what the traction is, blah, blah, blah. There's going to be a point at which, like, hopefully your side hustle is becoming so successful that it's competing with your real job. And that's the point when you decide, what is the point where it just makes no sense to keep my day job. I think that's the way
Right.
to do this. Where you're like, I would be
Yeah.
dumb to keep this day job. I got to go all in on this thing.
Right. That's what we did with Kind of Funny. It was just ironic that we were leaving IGN to do that. We weren't leaving our jobs at a factory or something like that. So it was tough to leave one fun, in quote, jobs for another fun, in quote, jobs or job. But it's interesting because it was that generational leap in such a way that I and that's with the luck I was talking about that allowed me to kind of regroup a few times when people in their life might not get that chance. But one thing you said, Finn, I think is really important for creators out there, or could be creators. If you find that the side hustle is too much for you, you don't want it.
Yes.
Yeah, and then you know that you can just keep it. And there's nothing wrong, because I say this sometimes and I don't mean it to be insulting, and I think people understand what I'm saying. There's nothing wrong with a job where you punch a clock or where you work at a desk. And
not a damn thing. I wish that I was wired for that.
Yeah.
I think that sometimes too, but it's just because I say that to people all the time when they complain about the work that's necessary in the gaming industry, and some guy at Insomniac saying he worked 40 hours a week on Spider-Man or whatever. And I'm like, well, maybe you did. I mean, I guarantee you that's not the case for most of the team. And I'm not so sure I'd be admitting that in a creative field, but I do think you brought up something interesting, which is the other thing you learn when you're doing it as a side hustle is if you want it or not. Because when I was in high school, I worked at a deli and I was in school and I played hockey and I wrote game facts for no reason. I mean, and then when I was in college, I freelanced and worked snow removal and landscaping and was in school and interned and all these kinds of things. So it's a great way to learn if you want it, because nothing makes you busier than working for yourself.
Yes.